Hi, I'm Jeanie Keltner, and you're here on Soapbox. Tonight we're going to be talking about the trolley folly. The folly of putting together a little teeny tiny trolley that's just going to roll around Sacramento, confusing the traffic, costing us money, making things more polluted, getting us nowhere. But I don't know what's in people's heads. And the worst of it is, most people don't know what is involved in this whole thing, and that's the really scandalous part of it. Before we get to our wonderful guests, Craig Powell and Maggie O'Meara, I want to thank the people who underwrite the show and do things for us that are invaluable. Number one, Pieces Pizza. Without Pieces Pizza, we would have no pizza on Monday night. We go to Pieces Pizza because it's on 21st Street between M and N in the heart of Midtown Sacramento. They sell pizza by the slice, good desserts, and many, many beers. It's a wonderful place to sit outside on a summer evening and watch the people walk by, and it stays open late, which is great. And we think the pizza they stuff the crust is among the best in Sacramento. The other person who makes our show possible, and that is James Israel, who runs Humor Times. Humor Times used to be the comic press. It was a little newspaper with lots of funny cartoons about topics that really aren't funny at all, i.e. politics as we play them these days. And it has not only good cartoons, it has interesting commentary by people like Jim Hightower and Will Durst, humorous takes on the political realities of our time. James Israel also does websites, so if you would like an inexpensive website, you can contact humortimes.com. And we want to thank him because he advertises our show. It makes a good gift if you have some people on your gift list. Now let's see if comes up next on the screen. I want to say that we're going to do the Undernews, my hour-long radio show at KVMR up in Nevada City. We will be on this coming Wednesday. I believe we will be doing something about the founding of Israel, but we haven't certified our guest yet, because this is an opening that just came to us. But we will be on at 12 noon, 12:05 actually, after the BBC News, kvmr.org. You can listen to it online, or you can go to 89.5. It doesn't come in equally all around Sacramento, but many places do get it. Anyway, love to have you tune in to that show. All right. Craig Powell, I only know you through the enormous amounts of work that you do to give the facts around city situations that seem to otherwise be quite fact-free.
We try.
You run Eye on Sacramento.
I do.
And I will bet you many people wish you would close your eyes.
A lot of people down at City Hall probably feel that way.
So you started to investigate the trolley. And what struck me when I looked at your report was the little initial introduction that told about all the information you did not have and could not get.
Yeah, the organization I head up, Eye on Sacramento, we kind of jumped into this trolley project late. And we generally don't jump into projects unless there's kind of two criteria met. One, it's important to the city and its citizens. And number two, if it's a subject that's just not getting adequate treatment by traditional media. And this was a case and a project where there had been no details of any substance being disclosed. So we jumped into it with both feet in mid-December, and a team of us worked feverishly for a month to produce a report that we issued in mid-January. And we've done lots of reports on the city of Sacramento, and this was the first time where we actually got stonewalled by the city. They refused to provide us documents.
They're getting to know you.
Well, I suppose they'd schedule conference calls and then cancel them. And the word had come on from higher city managers to basically stonewall us in the information that they were providing to us, which is really a rare experience for us. Actually, it's a singular experience. It never happened to us before.
And it's an illegal, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly illegal for them not to turn over the documents we requested. And we received none of the 26 documents that I requested via email to the city streetcar manager to this day. And that request was made in mid-December.
This is shameful, because this is, without information, you have no democracy.
No, you don't. And coincidentally, Ion Sacramento is teaming up with the League of Women Voters to launch this Ethics and Transparency Reform Project. And we're now in the middle of a series of 9 public forums where we're going out to every neighborhood in the city and trying to get folks' ideas on what they would like to see in the way of ethics and transparency reforms, and putting some teeth into these public records laws and other transparency laws to really assure that the public has access to the records of their business is a key part of that.
Well, I wish you luck.
Thank you.
It might be too late for the trolley.
It may be. I mean, that's coming up on a rather rapid schedule.
Let's first say the schedule, and then I'm going to ask Tom to come over, and we're going to hold up we're doing everything ad hoc tonight because we're short on crew, but ad hoc also works. In fact, I like ad hoc.
Except for council committees. We don't like closed-door ad hoc council committees.
Oh, that's the point. They don't have to have sunshine, do they?
No, those particular types of committees are closed behind closed doors, and we don't know when they're held. There's no minutes taken, no public opportunity to weigh in.
Okay, ad hoc TV is different because
Absolutely.
it affects very little.
Spontaneous TV. Wow.
Okay, all right, so, yeah, we're going to let's pull up the map, and, oh, I said we were going to do the dates first, but let's come over here, and let me see if I can, oh, I can't go far. I got to remember that I'm chained to my mic. Let's see how close we can get to this. Whose camera is going to run on this? Here we go. Now we need to go farther back so they can get an overview. Okay. Wow. Very hard to tell.
So what this represents, the brown area is the portions of downtown and the part of Midtown that are within a proposed tax district, a streetlight assessment district, if you will. Okay. It's called by another legal name, but that's functionally what it is. So what's happening is in the month of May, beginning in month, is going to be a all-mail ballot sent to every registered voter living in that area, of which there are 3,600 people. And they're going to decide whether or not to approve or disapprove of a proposed streetcar tax assessment to help raise about $30 million towards the $150 million cost of this streetcar project.
Now, for people to get some idea, this is 19th Street, right?
That's correct. That's the
Okay.
easternmost point, and it can't go any further east for a reason.
Because I have no mic.
That's one reason.
Great.
There's another
Great.
reason.
If you'll hold that, and I'll mic up here.
The other reason for why it stops at 19th and doesn't go into the heart of Midtown is because of the Union Pacific Railroad line that runs north-south between 19th and 20th Streets. And the problem is that a streetcar is not physically able to cross at grade, meaning at the same level, across railroad tracks. It's for safety reasons. So as a consequence, they halt the route at 19th Street, then it goes down 2 blocks, turns around, and comes back the other way. So this route will never be able to go to, for instance, Sac State, where it might be a natural location for a lot of students who might want to go back and forth between Midtown, downtown, and College. The only other way to get across the railroad tracks is to build what's called a flyover bridge. And those are very, very expensive. And we have one already for light rail down the R Street corridor near the Sacramento Bee headquarters.
But there's nothing in the budget for a bridge.
No, certainly not. And to take out all the apartment houses that have to be taken out in order to accommodate it is certainly a budget buster. So the easternmost edge of it is 19th Street. And then it runs along a route down J Street, coming back, and then that cuts over to the K Street Mall in front of the Convention Center.
And this is the K Street Mall.
Goes down the K Street Mall and then comes up that street. I think it comes up 8th, up to I Street, and then goes over to the Amtrak station.
So this is the Amtrak?
That's the Amtrak station.
Does it plan to go in?
Well, it'll go in front of it.
Okay.
Or behind it. I don't recall the exact configuration, but it's going to service the Amtrak station. Then it's going to come all the way down to 3rd Street. No. Continue on up there. There you go. And it's going to come right there, and this is a very, very serious problem here, and that is the corner of 3rd and I Street, H Street? H. And that happens to be where the on-ramp and the off-ramps are off of I-5. And that is also the focal point of what is going to be the greatest traffic jam in Sacramento's history when the arena is completed.
Because the arena is right in here, right?
Right, right. And the nearest freeway on-ramps and off-ramps are right there. So this streetcar is going to pass right across that street in front of those off-ramps and that off-ramp and on-ramp. And it's going to exacerbate what is already characterized by Caltran as creating what's called an F-grade traffic pattern on I-5, backing up 15 minutes or maybe even 30 minutes in stalled traffic for people trying to get to the games. So that is an engineering and a traffic challenge. So then it comes all the way down to Capitol Mall, makes a hard right turn, it's a very, very sharp turn, crosses onto Capitol Mall, gets on Capitol Mall, travels over the Tower Bridge, which would require the elimination of at least one lane of traffic, which will reduce the ability of cars to be able to get back and forth over Tower Bridge. It will then carry on, it's not marked on this particular map, but it will continue on westward to the West Sacramento Civic Center, the City Hall, where it essentially turns around and comes back.
This is where, if it works at all, in my experience, we ran that route yesterday. A friend and I drove the entire route, and it is already crowded on a Sunday. Yeah. I can imagine running a little slow streetcar down those streets.
And speed is very much a worry on this.
It won't go fast.
It will not go fast, and there's a couple of reasons for it.
Okay.
Number one is,
thank you, Tom.
Unlike light rail, see, light rail has a dedicated lane in most places, and it also has what's called signal priority, which means that when a car approaches an intersection, they can automatically turn a red light green and go. A streetcar, this streetcar called a circulating streetcar, is going to operate in traffic, meaning it's not going to be segregated into its own lane. It's not going to have the power to turn a red light green in order for it to keep going. And because it operates in traffic, it is not able to maneuver around obstacles. It's certain to be the slowest thing on the road, which will cause everything else to slow down behind it. So that's the primary reason why the average speeds of these streetcars are somewhere between 2.5 miles an hour, which is the clock speed for Portland's new streetcar line, and 7 miles an hour, which is what the proponents of this system are saying it's going to do.
You mean is it going 7 miles an hour as it's traveling? Or does that mean counting the stops?
On average,
counting the stops. You have to make the stops, which are short.
That's what the promised speed is. But in Portland, the new line is going 2.5 miles an hour, and there was a reporter up in Portland who decided to put it to a non-scientific test and walked the route at the same time as the streetcar and narrowly beat the streetcar to the destination with a fairly brisk walk. So now the question is this. Are people really going to ride something that's really not much faster, if at all, than walking? So that affects ridership. And number two, the slow speed, of course, congests traffic. And one of the proposed benefits of this was to ease congestion by taking people out of cars, putting them on transit. What it's going to do, at most, is take people off of streets who are walking and putting them into streetcars. Because this thing does not connect. And that's one of the real sins, if you will, of this circulating streetcar. It doesn't connect to other nodes of transit. It doesn't connect out into other areas. Streetcar systems in Europe all connect to outer areas. So they actually enhance mobility in transit options and take people out of cars.
This is a little self-enclosed loop.
It is exactly what it is. It does not take people from home to work and back again, which is the sine qua non of a transit system. So this doesn't add mobility, does not enhance transit. All it does is circulate people who are already downtown, which is going to be primarily tourists and maybe some people who want to take the tram to lunch.
Well, I did read the case study of Little Rock.
Yes.
And of Tampa.
Yes.
Which both made these little self-enclosed loops, and some of them have more attractions to go to than we have. If you travel that route, you will find it's not exactly a tourist route. I mean, I kept thinking, why would anybody want to see this? You know, some of the...
Yeah.
But it's not built for transportation.
It's really not. This is built as a supposed catalyst to economic development, because the systems in the country that have any real ridership have just what you described. They have destinations on them with high volume of traffic in between them. Portland has a university at the end of it. Others have big colleges where you see these large transfers of students back and forth. This does not have anything that's a heavy draw. I mean, the Civic Center in West Sacramento is not going to be a big draw. The Convention Center in itself is not a big draw. So that's part of the problem, is that we're never going to hit those numbers, those estimates. And on top of that, we have the federal government now who has reviewed a preliminary application for funding. The feds are being asked to fund half the cost, or $75 million of the $150 million. And the federal government came back just recently and said, basically, we don't believe your numbers when it comes to projected traffic ridership. Your documentation doesn't prove it. So, and it's the only system that has applied for these grants that has been so flagged by the U.S. government for having basically bogus numbers. And so they're going to have to solve that problem.
We heard that before.
Yeah,
this is the way our city council is operating these days, with bogus numbers.
And it goes back a long ways, Jeannie. I mean, back when the Convention Center expansion occurred a number of years ago, there was the problem of the rosy scenarios. They projected these massive volumes. And at the time, critics raised the flag and said, this is not going to work. These are not realistic projections. Here we are 15, 20 years later. They never came close to hitting those projections. And we at ION Sacramento, about a year or so ago, issued a report disclosing for the first time that the Convention Center was losing annually, year in and year out for over a dozen years, $16 million a year in red ink. And the city had never even reported, even to members of the city council, the amount of the annual losses. Even they were surprised. So the strategy typical in these projects is oversell them, overpromise.
It's the field of dreams.
Overproject. And then when they don't come true, bury the red ink.
I like the quote that you put at the beginning of your report by Willie Brown, who said, the problem, let's get it totally accurate, it's too good. In the world of civic projects, the first budget is really just a down payment. That's when the ignorant people make their choice without the facts to back them up. The idea is to get going. I love this part. Start digging a hole and make it so big there's no alternative to coming up with the money to fill it.
And that, sadly, is a reality time and time again on major public projects in California.
But this was not built for transportation, because I try to think. I live in Midtown. I try to think and I love public transportation. Mm-hmm. I love not having to park. I love seeing other people on the bus. I like getting to look out the window. All of those things I'm very positive. I can't think of a reason I would use this little loop. I could go to West Sac. The West Sacramento people will find it useful. People in West Sacramento could get from West Sacramento to downtown.
That's the rub. You see, you're absolutely right. You've identified that the primary beneficiaries of this are going to be people in West Sacramento, because West Sacramento currently is not served by any rail transport. They don't have light rail like we do. And they will benefit from being able to move to the new homes over there to the jobs in downtown. But we can't let the tail wag the dog here. Sacramento, on the other hand, it doesn't assist or add to our transit alternatives really at all. And it creates these major traffic congestion problems, and we haven't even gotten into the parking issues.
Let's get to, Maggie, I want to ask you, I see you're wearing a bicycle on your lapel. A woman after my own heart, even though I just crashed my bike and hurt myself for a month. But it's not my usual habit. You've ridden this route. And the reason I wanted to have you on the show, because you had this first-person response to what you see as this route.
Yes, I use my bicycle quite a bit for transportation. I'm very familiar with all the streets in downtown and midtown as a cyclist. And I happen to be a transportation engineer who specializes in bicycle transportation.
Aha.
So I know a little bit about how to make streets safer for cycling. And personally, as a bicycle driver, I avoid all of the streets that have rail lines going down them.
Explain.
Well, if you're crossing, let's say, the UP Railroad on N Street, you're crossing those lines at a 90-degree angle, perpendicular.
Right.
So you're not going to get your wheels stuck, but it is very easy to to get a bicycle wheel stuck between the rail and the roadway in what they call the flange. And in fact, while I was waiting for her to arrive for a meeting, a friend of mine who was on her way to the meeting got her tire of her bicycle stuck in the light rail on 12th Street and broke her leg.
There
she
you
was very
have
lucky
evidence
that
right
there wasn't a car coming at the moment, or she might have been dead. So the moving the light rail to H Street, as well as adding all of these additional blocks of light rail, just increases the risk for cyclists, and it will become harder and harder to avoid the streets with rail lines on them. When you're traveling down a street parallel to the rail, and you've got to move left or right on your bicycle, you'll be crossing it at a very shallow angle, and that's where the danger comes in.
That's real death.
And her personal observation comports exactly with what the experience has been in the cities that have streetcar systems. The levels of bicycle accidents are astronomical, and Portland probably leads the parade.
Wow!
And it's true in every city that has them, and it's insoluble. They've tried to build in mechanical things that would fill the gaps.
You could have great big fat tires.
Yeah, but none of the systems, the supposed solutions have worked at all. So the fact is the streetcars and bicycles do not mix. And Sacramento prides itself on being a bicycle town and a growing bicycle town. City policy is to encourage the growth of bicycle commute and so forth. And this is the antithesis of that policy, because you can't have a coexistence of the two on the same street without these perils.
Well, I too, at 12th Street or at K Street, where the tracks go like that, I caught my tire right out in front of the, and I came so close, I almost crashed, but believe it or not, I heard a voice. I think God actually spoke to me. Somebody said, just keep running. And my bike crashed, but I just kept running, and happily I didn't fall, But I could see that it would be very easy when I'm around a train track. I feel very nervous.
We have a file of media articles in every city that has streetcars highlighting this problem of the chronic bicycle accidents involving streetcars. And the broken legs sometimes are the minor accidents. If you get flung in front of a moving car, then it's checkout time. So, and this is a problem of this project not being carefully thought through and not being vetted in public. There has been never truly a single fully public meeting where all of these plans have been laid out and analyzed by the public. We've had quick meetings going over a couple of the financials, but the public's never had a full workshop, a public workshop to do this. They're in such a rush to get this thing done that they're rushing these elections, they're failing to do the due diligence. They haven't even made a number of the key decisions that go into how this thing is going to be operated. We don't know who's going to operate it. We don't know whether they're going to charge money. We don't know how much they're going to charge money. We don't know how many employees they're going to have on it. We have nothing but unanswered question after question. And that's why these kind of problems aren't getting properly vetted, is they're in such a hurry to go grab federal dollars out of the next federal budget that they're putting the cart before the horse.
And they're so afraid of opposition.
Absolutely.
That they don't give the project a chance to be cleaned up. I mean, it's possible that there might be some way that this could work. I told a friend, if it were more affordable, I might say, well, let's go with it. But after riding
this is $50 million
a mile,
I don't see it
at all.
That $50 million a mile, and my fellow guest works for Caltrans and has a sense of what freeway construction costs are. But it's in that neck of the woods what it costs to build freeway mile. And here we're just laying a pair of tracks in comparison to building a 6-lane freeway. Yet the cost per mile is comparable. That's pretty scary and worrisome.
Any comment to make on that from the transportation?
I really cannot speak professionally about that, but as a light rail user, I'm also concerned about relocating light rail to H Street. Now, when I go down to the Crest Theater or one of the restaurants down there or nightclubs, I know that at 10 o'clock or 10:30, I can hop on the light rail. The light rail stop is less than a block away from the Crest, especially if it's raining. Now, when they relocate the light rail to H Street, you'll have to walk 3 blocks north through an area where most of the businesses are closed at that time.
Right, right.
So there are no eyes on the street. And then you'll have to wait on H Street, where there's only a handful of businesses that are open late at night.
Right.
Whereas right now, the light rail runs from 7th or 8th to 12th, where everything is open and active.
Yeah.
I really don't understand why they're locating the light rail further away from their commuters and people who go to restaurants and things at night, especially after they've been drinking. You want them to take light rail home.
I can tell you why it's happening. I don't think it's a great reason, particularly in light of these safety concerns and the fact that people are going to shy away from walking three blocks on scary, closed, dark streets.
I don't know what's wrong with that.
But the reason was, as the story goes, is that the K Street merchants had an objection of light rail currently running down K Street. They didn't like the elevated platforms that are needed to enter the light, that they were unsightly, that they were blocked sight lines, and which seems to me, you know, maybe those were the complaints, but that hardly justifies the $15–17 million cost and the increased safety issues of moving light rail off of K Street over to H Street. And the other thing is, even if they left light rail on K Street, this streetcar is already planned to operate on the same trains, or rails rather, tracks, as light rail in several of these streets. If they left light rail on K Street, it would be more duplication of both transit systems working on the same line. That creates real problems because light rail works on a very tight schedule. It has 4 cars. There's a lot of people, and it has to work on the right schedule. If there's a problem, a blockage ahead, those 4 light rail line or cars can block entire intersections because a light rail train is almost
a train.
It's like a block long, a half block long. So the problem is streetcars are not going to operate on anything like a fixed schedule because it's going to be bobbing and weaving in and out of traffic all the time. So when they're operating on the same line, it is inevitable that the streetcars are going to have slowdowns, which are going to back up the light rail lines that are behind it. And when that happens, when a tail end of a light rail car gets backed up, it's going to block intersections, which is going to create gridlock in block after block after block. I don't think that's been thought through. When we talked to our transit experts, they didn't think it had been thought through either.
This reminds me too much of the arena, the same deal where you have the experts, the economists who study these projects, who do the numbers and do the research, say it will not spur development. That's the arena. We build it anyway, and then we just hope, you know, and we put a lot of money out there, and we have great speculation going right now. It does look like it's a frenzy, you know. Same deal with the streetcar. Every transit, there are hundreds of transit experts who say trolleys don't work anymore.
Yeah, it's funny that you should draw that parallel because you're right. Every academic study, economic study, independent study of sports facilities as a supposed stimulant to economic investment has found that it absolutely is not. It may change where money is being spent, but it doesn't create a larger pie. The same is true when it comes to this argument that streetcars are somehow a catalyst to economic development. The federal government itself, through the Federal Transit Administration, has made a finding that there is no evidence that these streetcars contribute or serve as a catalyst towards economic development at all. And what's happening here is that everyone points to Portland. And Sacramento has this chronic Portland insecurity syndrome where we all wish we could be Portland. Well, we don't want to be Portland, nor could we ever be Portland. But the argument is you build a streetcar and you get great growth. And they, again, use Portland as an example. What they don't tell you is that growth in Portland occurred along a streetcar line at the same time as the city was pouring hundreds of millions of dollars of tax subsidies and rebates and other economic inducements to developers to build in that area. Sacramento is putting in the streetcar line, but it doesn't have the means to match that with hundreds of millions of dollars of incentives and taxpayer incentives.
We've spent our hundreds of millions.
Exactly, and so I analogize it to making an omelet. and up in Portland, they had an omelet with multiple ingredients. And let's say one of the ingredients is Gouda cheese, and that's the Streetcar. What we're doing here is saying, okay, let's take the Gouda cheese and let's bring that to Sacramento, and we'll get the same fine-tasting omelet as you have up in Portland, where they have multiple ingredients. And that's the logical fallacy of this argument, that somehow there's going to be a catalytic effect on economic growth.
The streets that we went down looking at the route were already developed. Maybe not the best they could be developed. You know, there are parts of H and I that are pretty ordinary. You know, I mean, I suppose other things could be built there. But the place that can develop is West Sacramento.
Yeah.
And we went down, one of the big links of the whole project is this big long thing that goes along a street called Riverfront that is basically empty lots. So somebody's going to build there once we get the streetcar in there.
Well,
and
let me tell you the story of that riverfront line.
that really got my goat.
Actually, up until just several months ago, there was two possible spurs that were going to be used. And the reason for these spurs as options was that you've got to park these streetcars someplace overnight. You need a barn, which will double as a maintenance facility, right?
Okay.
You have to have that. Light rail has that. Streetcars need to have
Right.
it. So in the early going of the planning, they laid out two possible options on where you could put the barn. The first option was to place it under the WX freeway in Sacramento, at about 19th Street under the WX freeway. And that worked beautifully because there's an existing light rail line right down that area. You wouldn't have to build a foot of track.
You've already got a spur.
Exactly. Saving unbelievable millions of dollars. The second option was to put the barn in West Sacramento under the Pioneer Bridge, which is the Interstate or Business 80 bridge,
Okay.
and build it under the West Sacramento side of the Pioneer Bridge, and to run a spur from Tower Bridge all the way south along Riverfront Boulevard for about 1.5 miles at a cost of over $10 million. Naturally, what was the choice that they decided to make?
The expensive one.
The expensive one. And then you have to look at another interesting factoid in this. Who has a lot of property in West Sacramento along that new spur?
Do you, Maggie?
Maggie, do you have? I don't.
But I can guess.
But I know there's something called the Triangle District, where Mark Friedman and his development company have a huge amount of property that they're developing. Now, Mark Friedman happens to also be one of the managing partners of the arena.
Right.
He also happens to serve on the governing structure for this project, which is called the Streetcar Project Policy Committee. He's one of 2 private sector members of that committee. That committee calls the shots on where these lines are built. And that committee chose to build it right in front of his property at a cost of $10 million, compared to the cost of building it, having it run into a shed under the WX freeway at a fraction of that cost.
Right. Right.
That's a travesty.
Yes, it's one of the travesties that we are watching these days in our public life.
Oh, there's
in
one
Sacramento.
more that I think you'll love.
Oh, dear.
When we first reviewed this project, we took a very close look at the proposed assessments that they wanted to charge property owners in this assessment district. And all of the assessment amounts to be levied on property owners was to be based principally on the building square footage of each building that's in that district, which seemed a fairly fair way to do it. If you had a big building, you'd pay more. If you had a small building footprint, you'd pay less. And that was true of every property, other than nonprofits, in this district, with the exception of one property. What property had a special deal? It was the arena.
We want special deals for
And the arena was scheduled to get a discounted rate that was 2/3 less than what everybody else was paying. In other words, if they're paying $1,000, they're paying only $333. Now, this is pretty outrageous because it happens on the heels of us already having handed over almost $250 billion of Sacramento City taxpayer subsidy to them in the arena deal. So that deal's already done. They certainly don't need any more money to incentivize them to build an arena. But here we go. We come across the proposed rate sheet. It shows very clearly that it was to be a discount of 66% off the rate everyone else is paying. And this rate sheet, by the way, was approved by City Council, was approved by city managers, reviewed by city attorney, so forth. So we write our report highlighting that this is an outrageous. It's a ripoff of other taxpayers, because in an assessment district where you've got to raise a target amount of money, if you give one property owner a deep discount, you have to charge more on all the other property owners.
Well, not only that, Craig, one of the reasons you could say that the trolley would work is that it would get people back and forth to the arena.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons the trolley would be there.
Right, so they're supposedly the primary beneficiaries of it.
Right.
And now, instead of paying a proportionally larger share, they're paying less than everyone else. So in any event, we published our report. The next day, the city announces, we made a mistake. It was an error that we gave the arena this discounted rate. Never mind, we're going to change it. They're going to pay the same rate as everyone else. And they literally blamed it on a typographical error. Now, do you think I believe that for a moment? Do you think anybody in Sacramento believes for a moment
No.
that this was a typographical error after going through vetting before the council, the city manager, and the city attorney's office? So that's the kind of thing that we can catch when we are able to drill in. But there's a lot of things we don't know because we haven't gotten the documents yet.
Well, believe me, you know, I taught literature. This is not what I would read as literature, I confess. And it's very hard for me to even follow, I hate to say it, the numbers, you know, and it's very technical, it's very detailed, and it's exactly what you have to make a considered decision about huge amounts of public money.
Yeah. It's true. And the other piece of it, and I hate to talk about numbers again, but the one thing that has completely been ignored in this public debate and has been completely downplayed by the city officials and the politicians and the proponents is the fact that this system is designed from the get-go to lose a tremendous amount of money every year, year in, year out. It is projected that even if they charge a fare, that at most they'll only raise 25% of the cost of operating it from the fare box, meaning 75% of it's going to be pure losses that have to be paid by someone. Now, who's it going to be paid by? According to a cost-sharing agreement that they have between the city of Sacramento and the city of West Sacramento, Sacramento is going to bear 3/4 of the losses. Now, their outdated estimates project that they'll have only $4 million of losses a year. We don't believe that for a minute. First of all, they haven't been updated in 3 years. Secondly, they have every incentive to lowball it. And when they have those sort of incentives, guess what? They follow them. So we expect the city of Sacramento is going to probably, its general fund is going to be hit with deficits of somewhere in the neighborhood, losses from this streetcar, of somewhere around $3 to $5, $6 million a year. Now, the city has two ways of handling this. It could try to foist the losses onto RT, Regional Transit, in which case, since Regional Transit doesn't have any reserves and it operates on a skinny budget, it's going to have to slash bus services, which are already been cut back, or slash light rail services, which are real transit systems that actually move people from home to work and back. They're also systems that are used by people of very modest means.
Exactly.
For whom this may be their only means of transportation.
Exactly.
Their only means of holding down a job.
Right.
So there's a lot of social equity issues here. So if the city decides, oh, well, we can't foist it on RT, let's just pay for it ourselves. What is that $4 to $6 million a year losses? What impact does that have on the city? Well, it costs about $100,000 a year to have a cop. So you're talking about the equivalent of 40 to 60 police officers that we're not going to be able to hire. Sacramento has a chronic shortage of police officers. We are under-policed in comparison to the national numbers. There's a debate I know about police, and I don't want to get into that. But if you just look at the numbers, we are under-policed. Our parks are in terrible shape through underinvestment. You know, we have homeless issues.
There are many corners, the sewer smell is just mind-blowing, you know. I mean, we have a lot of things that need upgrading.
So one would think that before the city launches off to a program like this, where it's putting $7 million of its own money up front in it, that there ought to have been some public debate and discussion over the fact that there's going to be multi-million-dollar losses that are going to have to be covered somehow every year.
But Craig, don't transit advocates, because I published this on a Facebook and I got a lot of flack. I mean, I said some of these things on my Facebook page, and one transit advocate, and I am a transit advocate. I don't think this is for transportation. This is for tourists, And when you're depending on tourists, you're depending on a group that may or may not come. Whereas people who need to go to work, they need to go to work every day. They don't choose or not. But if we were really running a transportation system, wouldn't we also have losses? Don't most transportation systems operate at a bit of a loss?
You know, and it's okay to have losses with transit systems.
With real transit.
And, you know, I mean, you can't, since transit systems, you know, are particularly relied upon by people of modest means and very limited means, it's inevitable you're going to have a loss with the transit system. And that's okay as long as you're upfront about it and you tell people about it and you budget for it and anticipate for it. So if the city said, okay, we're setting our budget priorities and we think it's a high priority to subsidize this streetcar to the tune of $6 million a year, then fine. That's not what's happening. This is going to come out of left field because it's not in any of the budget scenarios of the city. It's going to slam the budget, and all of a sudden you're going to have to slash services to make the budget balance in light of these new losses. That's the terrible consequence of this. And, you know, what are the things that get cut most? They don't cut fire and police. Those are politically protected. But any other human service-oriented thing, parks, rec programs for kids, gone. And so this is what's coming down the pike because of the hide-the-ball policy of this city when it comes to major projects. You know, the city staffers, there's a lot of wonderful city staffers, and the overwhelming majority of them are wonderful, delightful people who care about their jobs, who want to help get the word out and to be you know, fully disclosing of city business. But what we have detected in the 4-year existence of ION Sacramento is this chronic, close to the vest, hide the ball attitude of the city when it comes to major projects.
Yeah, like we're the citizens are the enemies.
Exactly. You got to keep it away from the public view because you can't trust them to have the information.
To
it's
share
dangerous.
your views.
Right.
To
and that's a culture.
Is bad.
And it's got to change, or trust in city government will continue to degrade, as we saw it degrade on the heels of the city's underminement of the Arena Initiative, which had been signed by 35,000 city voters.
Right.
It was on its way to the ballot before the city decided to take a legal shot at it based on technicalities and managed to subvert the will of the voters. A lot of people got angry about that, and they're still angry about it.
Enough to defeat Measure L.
Almost inevitably,
Right.
Measure L took a hit because of people angry
Who
about
got to vote.
who got their votes stolen from them
Right.
by the demise of Measure L. So we already have a serious problem of public confidence in their city government. These kind of things make it worse.
Much worse. Tell me why they are hooked on a trolley. I mean, you could have a trolley-looking bus. There are buses all around Europe that are just wonderful.
We have
they
a
come right
picture
up
of
to
one.
the curb, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the other aspect of why it's so important that Craig is bringing this information out, because there should be transparency, but there should also be a well-defined need. As an engineer, that's what I deal in. What's the need for the project? They haven't really defined a need.
That's it exactly, really,
What
Maggie.
transportation need can be served by this trolley that can't be served by buses or the light rail line itself? I mean, the light rail itself currently runs within
Practically
a
the whole
block
route.
of the arena.
Yeah.
That is one of our board members at ION Sacramento hammers on this constantly, on how so much of this is duplicative to light rail already.
Right.
And what are we doing here? What this really boils down to is this, I think, fantasy thinking that because streetcars are a fad that are, quote,
They're
popular, and they have this wow factor, that somehow this wow factor is going to translate magically into economic growth. And the thing about fads is that they end. But the problem is the cost of the system is not going to end. We're going to issue out 30-year bonds to finance the taxpayers' share of the city taxpayers' share of this, the property owners. They're going to have to be paid off when this fad is long gone. And similarly, the federal government.
That's the rub.
Really, I mean, the $75 million we get from the federal government is not something that we can just say, well, 2 years down the line, it's not working out, we're going to shut it down. And that's not the way it works. You have to give back the money to the feds on a pro rata basis, depending on the number of years you have it before you shut it down. And that's why there are cities in this country that have started down the road and decided, no, we don't want to do this. It doesn't make sense. But then they're told, sorry, you're going to have to give back the $75 million you took from the feds. So they went ahead with the project because they had a gun to their head financially. So
Dug a bigger hole.
yeah, and now we have the District of Columbia, which has just completed building a system at a cost of, I believe, $250 million. Very expensive. Maybe it was $300 million. And they've had so many operational problems trying to get it started with all its test runs, constant accidents, streetcars catching on fire for unknown reasons, that they are at the point where their transit director says, we're not sure whether we're ever going to open this or not. And this is after dumping all that money in.
Oh.
That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. I don't want to see Sacramento get to that point. But when you rush decisions, when you don't have a true public vetting so that you have outside specialists and experts and citizens who can come in and critique it, you make these poor decisions in the dark. And we see that again and again.
It's fantasy thinking. It's if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
It's when you read about Tampa and Little Rock, they can't prove that there's any economic development created by that trolley. But the city planners all say, well, it's associated as an image with our city.
Yeah.
That's a lot to pay for an image
Yeah.
to go with your city. And do people visit a city to visit a streetcar?
No.
Did he weighed in at all on how moving the light rail to 8th Street might affect their current passengers? Will this be to their benefit?
Here's the thing about RT. RT is kind of the favorite whipping boy around Sacramento. It is. You got to understand how RT is run. RT is run by a board of directors that's comprised of all the elected officials locally. So they've got a great many Sacramento City councilmen on their boards of director. And those council members are gung-ho for this project. So the RT director, who's a fine fellow, can't get out there and independently say, we think this is the worst thing imaginable, when he has half his bosses on his board telling him, we love this thing. So he's been, that group, that entity has been largely neutered in terms of being a source of independent analysis of it. They're going to have to live with whatever the city and the taxpayers decide to do, what the voters decide to do on this. And I'm sure there's a variety of opinions within RT on it, but it's going to be a hellacious challenge operating this with these various problems. The other problem we haven't even gotten to, is parking. And we might want to talk about a moment about that.
Okay, well, we have about 5 minutes.
When the arena went in, and there was huge complaints about the traffic congestion that would happen, and concerns about adequate parking, the arena proponents said, look, we're going to have a streetcar system. And rather than us pay the cost of putting in new lanes on I-5 at a cost of $150 million, they offered to put $500,000 towards the streetcar, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the traffic impacts it's going to have on I-5. So one of their arguments is, look, people will park somewhere along the streetcar line and they'll ride the trolley to the game, and that'll relieve traffic congestion in or around downtown. Well, guess where those people are going to park? They're going to park next to everybody's homes out there along this route, and they're going to suck up all the on-street parking available.
There's hardly any on-street parking available right now.
Exactly. When you bring 8,000 cars into Midtown and downtown, and they're all hunting for the cheapest place to park, and if the cheapest place to park is in front of your house or your apartment house, and then that's where they're going to park, so they can get on the trolley for $1 and get to the game, rather than going down and paying $15, $20 to park closer to the arena. So there is going to be a huge traffic impact on downtown and midtown residents because they're going to lose that space. And that's going to change the quality of life for living in Midtown.
Well, just the way they've raised the parking rates already to pay for the arena has changed the quality of life now downtown.
Yeah, and the implications of that have not even been fully felt yet.
No.
The additions of meters throughout the city, the grid area is going to change life for merchants down in Midtown in particular.
Totally.
Oh, by the way,
yeah,
we talked about buses. This is a picture, and I don't know if we can get this on camera.
No, I don't think we could. It's very small.
It is very small. But what it is it's along this line of the point about how streetcars are a fad, because they're considered cool. And part of it is the way they look. So what a lot of innovative people are doing now is they're adopting these bus rapid transit systems, and they're redesigning buses to look very modern. And now they're indistinguishable from streetcars. So in our EOS report on the Sacramento Streetcar project, we included a picture of a modern bus system that is absolutely indistinguishable from what streetcars look like.
You know, and one of the things I note as a user of transit is that you get on at the curb level.
Right.
You don't have to climb up.
Right.
One of the things that's bad with buses,
Right.
they're too high.
Right, and they've redesigned so many of them now, so they've cleared out a lot of the seats. They have the low entry level. Everything, I mean, it is impossible by looking at this picture to discern whether it's a bus or a streetcar. So the argument is
It's only millions of dollars cheaper.
it's 1/5 the capital cost.
Oh, there you go.
And it has the maneuverability to get around barriers. If you've got a stalled car, or you've got a car in front of you that's waiting to make a right-hand turn against a light, and you're running a streetcar, you can't move. But if you're in a bus, you can go around the thing. So you can have actual enhanced transit. So,
But you've got to tell me, is it really true in this day and age that if one streetcar has an electrical problem, the whole line shuts down?
that I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that's what the transit critics are saying. That you have a power outage on one car and the whole. I can't believe that that's the case, because aren't we too modern to have that problem?
You are beyond my scope of expertise.
Okay.
I suppose, Craig, too, with these faux streetcars that are really buses, the streets would be safer for cyclists.
There'd be no rails.
And if
Right.
the city found that it was a boondoggle, they could sell off the fleet.
Or redeploy it to other routes.
Yes.
Well, the other thing that isn't it supposed that the trolley will not be operating on certain game nights?
It is.
Can this be?
It is. We predict that while they tout the streetcar as being a huge help for relieving traffic congestion on games nights, we predict that they will take the streetcars out of service on game nights because of the fact that it's going to congest light rail cars and create backups with light rail cars. So we think that their path of least resistance and likely solution to the problem is to take the streetcars off the system during games.
Well, somebody did bring up that you could run a streetcar between the arena and the baseball field, because there will be plenty of parking over at the baseball field.
Well, you can run jitney buses too. You don't have to spend the $50 million a mile to build a streetcar system.
Well, that
Yeah.
same person said they've already signed the contract for the trolleys.
Well,
Could this
nothing's
be true?
done yet on any of this. There's this critical piece coming up is this election starting in early May, running through early June, and it's going to require a 2/3 majority vote of the 3,600 registered voters in that district that's on that map. And if they approve that by a 2/3 majority, then it's going to be up finally to the federal government to make a final decision on whether to fund this. Now, the proponents of this are very optimistic that the federal government will fund this. We're not nearly as optimistic that that's going to happen. With tight budget constraints and the like, we don't know if this is going to fly as easily as they think. The other concern we have is this whole fad of building streetcars has really turned on a change in policy in the Federal Transit Administration. They used to kind of evaluate these grant applications for funding assistance on the basis of two primary factors. One, did it improve transit and mobility options?
That ought to be a number one
Right.
consideration.
And number two, is it cost effective? But now what's happened is in recent years, they've demoted those as factors in the scoring system of these applications. And instead they're putting number one priority on whether it's perceived to be a catalyst for economic growth. Well, all that takes is an economist's set of projections. You can sell anything with this set of projections. And that has caused this land rush towards building these systems.
And they won't subsidize a non-rail based?
Well, they're
Couldn't
not
we say-
nearly as popular among the feds as these rail-based transit systems, particularly streetcar systems.
Well, what it really shows is how sunshine not only disinfects, but it makes for a good project. You know, if this had been really submitted to many more eyes than simply the 5 eyes on Sacramento, what do you have, 10 eyes on Sacramento?
We've got about 18.
18, is it 9 people or?
No, I guess we've got double that.
30, okay, whatever that is. I know, 36.
Yeah.
I can do that kind of math. But the problems would not have been allowed to continue this long if other people had looked at it with a more impartial view.
Yeah, and I think if they're not rushed to say, okay, it's future, let's take it through the public process, let's wait for the next budget year, let's do it right, let's build more consensus behind it, that would have been the smart thing.
And you people, the smart thing would be to say no to this project. This is not a good project, and other projects will come along that would serve us and bring us transportation. This is for tourists. We're not tourists. We live here. A world-class city serves its citizens. Thanks to all these people who are riding on your screen, they made this show. Also Maggie O'Mara and Craig Powell, who came in to share their ideas about this system. Come back next week.